जी बिस्मिल्लाह अस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला रसूलिल्लाह। अस्सलामु अलैकुम एवरीबॉडी एंड अस्सलामु अलैकुम आज़म।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम यूसुफ भाई, कैसे हैं आप?
मैं ठीक हूँ, आप कैसे हैं?
मैं अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह ठीक ठाक।
फिट
जी यूसुफ भाई,
फिट फाट है।
आई थिंक मैं ठीक ठाक हूँ अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। सबसे पहले हमें मेरा ख्याल है कि आज की पॉडकास्ट शुरू नहीं करनी चाहिए बिफोर वी टॉक अबाउट प्रोफेसर मुबशिर साहब।
डेफिनेटली जी। प्रोफेसर मलिक हुसैन मुबशिर, फॉर दोज ऑफ यू हु
वन
आर
ऑफ द पायनियर्स इन पाकिस्तान।
I'm sorry, I think आज़म आपकी वीडियो में लैग आ रहा था, so there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the two of us. Go ahead please.
One of the pioneers in Pakistan in establishing psychiatry across the country, और फिर यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ हेल्थ साइंसेस के वीसी के तौर पे जो उन्होंने एक काम किया कि बिहेवियरल साइंसेस को एक एसेंशियल पार्ट बनाया एमबीबीएस के कोर्स वर्क का। वरना इससे पहले हमारे डॉक्टर्स पूरा एमबीबीएस कर जाते थे और उनको बिहेवियरल साइंसेस या साइकेट्री से मुतल्लिका या कोई साइकोलॉजिकल इश्यूज भी कोई चीज़ होते हैं, उनकी अलिफ बे भी नहीं पता होती थी। तो ये उनका एक बहुत बड़ा जो उन्होंने अपने जो कैरियर का जो उनकी एक एंड स्टेज थी कैरियर की एज अ वीसी ऑफ यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ हेल्थ साइंसेज, जो उन्होंने ये वाला काम किया।
बिल्कुल। जिस इंस्टीट्यूट से मैं ट्रेन हुआ, इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ साइकाइट्री बेनज़ीर भुट्टो हॉस्पिटल, ही बेसिकली लेड द फाउंडेशंस ऑफ दैट इंस्टीट्यूट। मुबशिर साहब जब इंग्लैंड से वापस आए थे, ही कुड हैव स्टेड इन इंग्लैंड, वर्कड देयर, डन व्हाटएवर ही वांटेड टू इन साइकाइट्री। ही हैड अ मेंबरशिप इन मेडिसिन एज वेल। वो सारा कुछ उन्होंने किया। यहाँ जब आए, ही वाजंट अलाउड टू हैव अ रूम टू सी साइकियाट्रिक पेशेंट्स। उन्होंने किसी तरह से अपनी अपॉइंटमेंट तो करवा ली थी, लेकिन द एमएस ऑफ द हॉस्पिटल सेड कि यहाँ पे आपकी कोई जगह नहीं है, हमें पागलों का डॉक्टर नहीं चाहिए। एंड मुबशिर साहब ने धोबी घाट के सामने एक कुर्सी रखी, एक मेज़ रखा, एक तख्ती लगाई कि नफ्सियाती अमराज के मरीज़ यहाँ रब्ता करें। एंड दैट्स द बिगिनिंग ऑफ वन ऑफ द greatest institutes of this country, and most of the psychiatrists serving in Pakistan are a product of that institute. और मुबशिर साहब यही बताया करते थे कि उनसे दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट्स वाले हाथ नहीं मिलाते होते थे कि ये पागलों का डॉक्टर है। And through all of that, he was able to develop a position for psychiatry in the country. And so if we are sitting here today, both Azam and I, then Mubashir Sahab has a huge role to play in that, and we pray for him, his family, and all his students, and everywhere that psychiatry is being practiced in Pakistan and around the world. जो उसमें चीज़ें उन्होंने contribute की, it's unparalleled. It is unparalleled. चलें, Azam, should we begin then with
Yes.
with today's program? जी
डॉक्टर यूसुफ, हमारे आज के जो गेस्ट हैं, मुझे बहुत अजीब सा लग रहा है उनको आप कहते हुए हमारे गेस्ट हैं, क्योंकि वो आपका और मेरा दोनों का बहुत अच्छा दोस्त है। डॉक्टर अली हसन, वो इस टाइम न्यूयॉर्क में होते हैं और वो वहाँ पे साइकियाट्री की रेजिडेंसी कर रहे हैं और साथ साथ साइकोएनालिसिस की ट्रेनिंग कर रहे हैं। जो हमारा जो प्राइमरी कंसर्न है जो अली को बुलाने के लिए, एक तो हमारी जनरल पब्लिक और ख़ास तौर पे वो लोग जो पाकिस्तान में साइकियाट्री या साइकोलॉजी से मुंसलिक, कि क्यों एक अमेरिका में एक बंदा अमेरिका के हब में बैठा हुआ वो साइकियाट्री की अच्छी बड़ी रेजिडेंसी कर रहा है, आखिर क्यों वो एक आउटलायर साइकोएनालिसिस उसकी ट्रेनिंग करने की तरफ गया, जबकि हमने तो सुना था कि अमेरिका में तो ऐसे नहीं होता, जबकि अमेरिका में तो ये ईसीटी होती है और अमेरिका में नई से नई दवाइयाँ आती हैं और अमेरिका में ये होता है, अमेरिका में वो होता है। सो डॉक्टर अली हसन,
ड्रम रोल एंड देयर ही इज।
जी,
अस्सलाम वालेकुम अली।
जी,
अस्सलाम वालेकुम अली।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम यूसुफ भाई, आजम भाई, आपकी इज्जत देने का बहुत शुक्रिया।
बड़ी मुश्किल देती है, दिल नहीं थी कर रहा।
बहुत बहुत मुश्किल था। So
अली को दरमियान में
बहुत
लेना है।
शुक्रिया। और जी,
I'm sorry. Now he's in the middle. I just wanted to bring you in the middle. Okay.
अच्छा, before we
तो
begin,
अली
my
कैसे हो आप?
condolences to the both of you. आप दोनों के professor and mentor थे, at least distantly, Professor Mubashir. Indeed, he's a great loss. But I hope the two of you will be able to build on what he was able to do.
Ji, inshallah, all of us, the psychiatry community in
Yes.
Pakistan, hopes to be
Inshallah.
able to carry on his legacy, inshallah. Inshallah. Ji. Ali, like Azam said, आपको क्या ज़रूरत पड़ी है अमेरिका में, न्यूयॉर्क में? आप साइकाइट्री के इतने अच्छे डिपार्टमेंट में ट्रेनिंग कर रहे हैं, रेजिडेंसी कर रहे हैं, you're learning from the best of people. Why complement that with psychoanalysis of all things?
साइकोएनालिसिस जो कि अब किसी यूनिवर्सिटी में भी पढ़ाया नहीं जाता, वो उनके एक अपने डेडिकेटेड सेंटर्स हैं। यूनिवर्सिटीज़ भी उसको अब उस तरीके से मुंह नहीं लगाती हैं, अगर हम कहें तो। आपको क्या पड़ी, आप सुबह 8 बजे जाते हो, 5 बजे वापस आते हो, और उसके बाद ट्रेनिंग, अपनी साइकेट्री ट्रेनिंग के बाद भी आप आओ, आराम से अपनी रेस्ट करो, बाद में अपनी प्रैक्टिस करो। अच्छी एनालिसिस की क्या जरूरत है?
इसमें कुछ पर्सनल वजूहात हैं, which I think और मैं बीच में उर्दू और अंग्रेजी में दोनों में बोलूंगा, because that's what I'm comfortable with, और मुझे लगता है हमारी ऑडियंस भी इसी तरह की होगी कुछ।
उनको लगता है शिवा से इस तरह के पीस निकलते हैं जिनको ना अंग्रेजी पूरी आती है ना उर्दू पूरी आती है। जी, please go ahead.
It takes one to know one.
जी, for those of you watching, Shifa Ali and I share the same alumnus alma mater. Chale, please, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So, psychiatry is a very very interesting and complicated field. और तारीख जो है वो it's filled up with different controversies and ये treatment सही है, ये गलत है, फलाना है, ढमकाना है, and it seems जैसे और fields में भी होता है कि it's assumed कि the new is always better. I think we should be a little cautious, and most people are cautious. जब वो आगे अपनी फील्ड में बढ़ते हैं तो they realize कि जो चीज़ नई है that doesn't necessarily replace the old, that can add to it, but it doesn't certainly replace it. तो आजकल की psychiatry in America and I would safely assume in Pakistan as well, is predominantly regarding psychopharmacology, on the complex interactions of serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine, and how we can get that mixture right. Ultimately, it's that question. हत्ता कि बहुत से psychiatrists अपने आप को as neuropharmacologists कहलाना चाहते हैं, being कि आपके दिमाग में your neurons are wired in a certain way, और उन neurons को आप affect कर सकते हैं through certain medications that the psychiatrist prescribes. तो वो psychiatry का जो baggage है एक तरह से, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, Freud, उससे दूर होने के लिए, and to get on these newer drugs and to be very precise in their interventions, they're moving towards these medications. Problem ये आती है कि they find that the more they're doing this, the more mechanical and the more technician-like they're becoming. Or their patients are the first to notice that. कि एक पेशेंट साइकाइट्रिस्ट के पास आता है, उसको बहुत से मसाइल हैं, उसने अपने आप को समझना है, उसने अपनी सोसाइटी को समझना है, उसने अपने मर्ज को समझना है, उसको वो एक्सप्लेनेशन दी जाती है कि तुम्हारे हार्मोन्स में मसला है और कोई मसला नहीं है. एंड दिस इज, आई नो आई एम मेकिंग सम ग्रॉस जनरलाइजेशंस हियर, लेकिन उसके बगैर बात समझ नहीं है. तो आपके हार्मोन्स का मसला है और एसेंशियली और कुछ भी नहीं है. और अगर वो कहते भी हैं और कुछ है, मतलब आपकी रिलेशनशिप्स में डिफिकल्टीज हैं, वो अल्टीमेटली आपके हार्मोन्स की वजह से. तो इट्स इन अ सेंस, इट्स आप इंसान से वो बहुत से इख्तियार ले जाता है. एंड पेशेंट्स डोंट लाइक इट. Their medications in turn don't work as effectively as they hoped and imagined it would. अब वो चीजें उनकी रिसर्च और डेटा में भी सामने आ रही है आहिस्ता आहिस्ता. Some people would acknowledge that, and some people would be like, ये डेटा जो है इतना solid नहीं है. We need more studies. We need more studies. But there's good enough data which is pointing towards के by simply prescribing medications, we won't make our patients better. So on the other side, they started to notice that psychotherapy, and by psychotherapy I mean कि आप अपने मरीज से बात करें, उनके मसलों को समझें, their ways of relating with other people, उसको समझें. That ultimately has an effect on your neurons, on how your brain is wired. So they were able to capture that using CT scans and MRIs, and there's good research in that sense coming out. It's preliminary. So जब ये data उनके पास सामने आया, so they realized कि हमारी तो तारीख है psychoanalysis और psychotherapy की, which we had forgotten because it was something very old. And we thought medications was the real deal. Ultimately, if we were just to find this one transmitter, one hormone, the ultimate pill, it would take our depressions and anxieties away. But they found out that therapy has something very useful to offer. And ultimately, जो playground है जिस पे ये सारी changes हो रही होती हैं, वो आपके neurons ही हैं, वो आपका दिमाग ही है. So they were like, maybe we need to revisit the psychiatric history and learn from that. And of course, that doesn't mean we go back into classical, traditional Freudian psychoanalysis. That's come a long way. That's developed quite a bit. So I think that's something that the field is struggling with, is coming to terms with. And that's something that I also realized because of my own personal experiences and having good company of academics and people who are honest in academia. So that's why I thought if I am just going to prescribe medications, I would be doing a grave injustice to my patients and myself as well, because there's no fun in speaking with people if we really cannot understand and relate with them.
सो अली, आपने जो बात की, मेरे दो मासूमाना सवाल हैं इससे मुताल्लिक. एक तो ये कि आपने जो ये वाली बात की कि मोर डाटा, तो हम लोग देखते हैं कि मुख्तलिफ साइंसेस में ऐसे हुआ, बायोलॉजी में, फिजिक्स में, और जो हार्ड साइंसेस हम जिन्हें कहते हैं, कि कोई प्रॉब्लम था, उसके लिए हमारे पास डाटा नहीं था और हमने फिर जब मजीद डाटा इकट्ठा किया तो वो प्रॉब्लम हल करने की तरफ हम लोग चले गए. तो क्या जो साइको फार्माकोलॉजी है, क्या उसमें ये पॉसिबिलिटी नहीं है कि मोर डाटा और कुछ वो जो कोई ऐसे न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर्स या ऐसे रिसेप्टर्स हम डिस्कवर कर लें कि जिनकी वजह से मेडिसिन से ही ये सब कुछ ठीक हो जाए? एक तो ये चीज़. दूसरी चीज़ ये कि आपकी बात से ऐसा लगा कि मेडिसिन्स शायद बिल्कुल भी काम नहीं करती और हमें बिल्कुल ही एक वो जो दूसरी अप्रोच है कि मेडिसिन्स बिल्कुल भी नहीं लेनी, ये आपको आप इन पे लग जाते हो, आपको फिर इनका विड्रॉल आता है और आपकी ब्रेन को नुकसान पहुंचाती हैं, तो मेडिसिन जो हैं वो फायदे से ज़्यादा नुकसान करती हैं। तो ये दो चीज़ें, हम इन चीज़ों को फिर हम कैसे देखें?
जो आपका दूसरा सवाल, उसको पहले I can answer that, वो ये है कि देखें, होता यही है कि या फिर थेरेपी को बाहर फेंक दें आप, मैं सिर्फ दवाइयाँ प्रिस्क्राइब करूंगा, ठीक है, या फिर मैं सिर्फ थेरेपी करूंगा और दवाइयाँ को they have nothing good to offer. ऐसे नहीं होता. um, every scientist, every technician, carpenter, any human being has many tools for different problems. ठीक है, तो एक ही चीज सारे लोगों के साथ काम नहीं करती. आप उसको जितना मर्जी कोशिश कर लें, it's not going to work for all. Some people, yes, they do need medications, and some people actually don't need medications and they won't get better on medications क्योंकि उनका मसला जो है ultimately जाके translate तो neurotransmitters में होगा, but it's not
And
going
some
to get
people
better with.
need both.
And some people need both. Absolutely. And some people need
And
both. तो
and some people need more than either of these two.
Some people need more than either of these two. The idea is to keep a space open for what is needed by the patient. और ये expert का काम है, ये psychiatrist का काम है, ये psychologist का काम है to identify what the patient needs. Dawai, psychotherapy, both, one or the other, or something else. Unfortunately, psychiatry में ये हुआ है कि all of us are convinced by all these fancy journals out there that there's only one way of treating patients, and that's through medications. I know it's a gross generalization again, but that's the general academic attitude, and psychiatry within itself is struggling with it. And this intimately ties in also to आपका पहला सवाल था about data. Yes, you can find more data. Maybe we all can wait to have enough data. लेकिन मसला ये है कि जो the prophets of psychiatry, the big giants of psychiatry, who are leading this field, they've come to realize that there is good enough data for us to look somewhere else. और psychopharmacology की तारीख जो है वो 1950s से लेकर अब, we're in 2020, so it's a good 70 years. It's at least 3 generations. So we could either keep pursuing that same track, or we could look elsewhere, or science or clinical practice में ऐसे होता है. When we start running into hitting walls, we need to look elsewhere. If we don't, then there are problems and questions ultimately come to life and death.
Ali, you mentioned
एक चीज
in the beginning that there are certain tendencies within psychiatrists that they prefer to call themselves neuropharmacologists or psychopharmacologists for that matter. When I hear that, I feel like that's actually pretty honest. कि जब आप अपने आप को as neuropharmacologist या psychopharmacologist label कर रहे हो, तो at least वो जो एक absolutist claim है कि we got you covered in every domain of your mental health needs, and then all we ever end up doing is prescribing medications. At least as a neuropharmacologist, they're outrightly saying this is our domain, there may be other domains, and so be it.
I see what I hear what you're saying. लेकिन उसके पीछे जो attitude होता है, that is, we don't, because psychiatry encompasses sociological aspects of the patient's living environment, their psychological makeup and structure, and then of course उनकी neurobiology क्या है. The psychiatrists wanted to cut themselves off in a sense from वो कहेंगे हाँ ये psychosocial factors भी जरूरी होते हैं, but they're not as important, and that's not something we do. So we just rather focus on the biological part, and then they are trying to rebrand themselves as neuropharmacologists as well. So it's sort of a distancing maneuver in certain ways from what psychiatry was and where they hope it to be, or where they see it to be. So data में उनको फिर अब तो we can choose to overlook it. I think it was Kenneth Kendall. He's a big geneticist or neurobiologist. उसने कोई I think 90s में पेपर छापा था, psychotherapy and the single synapse. And if I recollect, the idea was, okay, the spoken word, of course, was we do it technically. We establish therapeutic relationships with our patients. We explore that. That can affect the way one's brain is wired. It's quite powerful. And the second one is, now they're finding out एक बहुत मशहूर साइकोफार्माकोलॉजिस्ट है यूएस में, उसकी टेक्स्ट बुक हर रेजिडेंसी में पढ़ाई जाती है. His name is Stephen Stahl. उसने recently एक editorial लिखा था in which he says कि psychotherapy is an epigenetic drug. इसका मतलब क्या है? Genetics mostly was thought to be fixed and rigid, जो उसमें code हुआ है that cannot be changed, right? Or ultimately that is responsible for human psychology and behavior. So इसमें this was a popular criticism against that was the search for the suicide gene, for example. Okay, what is that gene that is responsible for people, that makes them commit suicide? And if we just target that, we'd be able to address suicidality in our patients. But later they found out that our genes can change with time and with our interactions with the environment and society. Azam bhai, can you hear me?
Yes, GLE, I can hear you.
I think there are some. Ji.
So Ali,
so they found out ultimately that genes, they're not fixed. Of course,
आप एनालिसिस में ट्रेनिंग कर रहे हो. सॉरी, मेरा ख्याल है कि मेरी तरफ से थोड़ा सा वीडियो का लैग है, इस वजह से आपको आवाज़ देर से पहुंच रही है. एक चीज़ जो हम लोग जो पाकिस्तान में एटलीस्ट जो हमें एक्सपीरियंस होती है, और वो जो मेरे जो मेंटल हेल्थ प्रोफेशनल्स जो बाकी भी हैं, वो लोग भी इस चीज़ को ज़रूर इस पे एग्री करेंगे कि जब हम थेरेपी की बात करते हैं तो अक्सर ऐसा होता है कि पीपल इंसिस्ट के मसला जिसके साथ है आप सिर्फ उसी से बात करें, जबकि हम ये देखते हैं कि, और एनालिसिस तो इसको खास तौर पे प्री सपोज करता है कि देयर इज अ होल यूनिट कॉल्ड फैमिली, जहाँ से साइकोपैथोलॉजीज की रूट्स जो हैं वो निकलती हैं. और मेरा नहीं ख्याल कि कोई भी साइकोथेराप्यूटिक स्कूल जो है वो फैमिली को या जो दूसरे सोशल फैक्टर्स हैं उनको निगलेक्ट करता है. तो इसके बारे में जो भी आपकी जो एनालिसिस की ट्रेनिंग है वो क्या कहती है कि हाउ हम इस चीज़ को किस तरह मेंटल हेल्थ प्रोफेशनल्स इस बात को आगे लेके चलें कि हाउ द पैथोलॉजी इज rooted not only in the person but also in the whole unit or the habitat in which the person is living.
I don't know. That's a challenge. Because it's a challenge academically, it's a challenge. Conceptually, it's a challenge in the clinics. Okay. I think a lot of our patients who come in, उनको ये होता है कि the problem is within them, like you've identified. While some part of that, and I say that very carefully, some part of that, क्योंकि इंसान is उसके इर्द गिर्द की environment से बहुत ज़्यादा मुतासिर होता है, influence होता है. So they're sort of enmeshed in that social network. The patient doesn't know that. So I think establishing a good sense कि कौन सी problems है patient की which are coming from outside of him, उसकी social environment, घर के लोग, बीवी, बच्चे, economic factors, job stressors. Are they real? Are they unreal? Are they being feigned by the patient? Are they being exaggerated or embellished? Or if it is a real problem on the outside, how is the patient contributing towards that? It is possible that the patient is, and we cautiously introduce that idea. That's one. इसके आगे बात आती है कि a patient हमारे कमरे में बैठा है, we can't change the outside world for him. Ultimately, the patient has to do it, him or herself. Right? So certainly we can inculcate and nurture certain habits and ways of looking at things, and it's a long process, and ultimately enable the patient to change those things that are external to him. It's different from numbing themselves down from the effects of the external environment. Right? क्योंकि बहुत से लोग, they will overlook that these problems are real on the outside of the patient, they're unhealthy, लेकिन ये आप दवाई लें, you won't feel bad about what's happening with you on the outside. On the other hand, in psychotherapy, if the idea is you can help the patient, impart certain skills, he can change their external circumstances. Not only that, if they can't change their external circumstances, they can cope with it better, but with understanding. Right? It's not just a numbing away of feelings. And I'm not saying psychopharmacology does that, but sometimes there are tendencies for us to do that.
Ali, if I were to take the conversation slightly in a different direction, we spoke earlier on that psychiatry के अंदर ये tendency develop होना शुरू हो गई है, and psychology से, psychoanalysis से, Freud से, post-Freudian से एक it's like baggage that we're carrying. So ironically psychiatry के अपने daddy issues शुरू हो गए हैं, which pills will probably not take care of. But if we were to look deeply into that, how much of a role does the progress in internal medicine, neurology, surgery, other medical specialities, how much of that do you think is contributing to this attitude?
Gee, I think Zahir hai, psychiatrists are not real doctors. That's the popular phrase that goes. I think that's what you started off from as well, right? Ye psychiatrist kyun scrubs pehen raha hai?
तो बताइए दो
So in order, and it's there within psychiatrists themselves, right? If they want to be as medical as other fields, they want to be as precise as other fields. So hence we need criterias, hence we need imaging, hence we need biomarkers and genetic testing. So we actually know, to catch depression confidently, it's my opinion, and it's based on the work of others. कि psychiatry में वो medical aspect भी है, but there's also a very relational aspect of psychopathology, which is ignored the more you medicinalize psychiatry. Okay, so the problem is not that medications are not important in psychiatry, they are, but they're not the only thing. Psychiatry has, over the past many decades, focused with psychopharmacology mostly, and they had their reasons for that. And I think they need to get over with these reasons at this point. And they need to consider the relational aspects of it as well. अब जाहिर है, medicine में, surgery में, neurology में, you can overlook the relational aspects because they don't impact your patient as much. They do, but they're not the source of the dis-ease that our patients have. Psychiatry में, many forms of depression are problems of relating with other people. कि आपका दूसरे इंसान के साथ ताल्लुक कैसा है, एंड वो आपकी माँ के साथ हो सकता है, वो बाप के साथ हो सकता है, आपके बच्चों के साथ हो सकता है, आपकी बीवी के साथ हो सकता है, आपके कॉलीग्स के साथ हो सकता है, राइट? और जब ये रिलेशनशिप पैटर्न्स में आपको मसला हो रहा है तो एसेंशियली यू आर अनॉयड, यू आर एंग्री, यू आर इरिटेटेड, you find poor sense of self-esteem, or ultimately they end up to the psychiatrist's office, and psychiatrist कहता है ये लो pill, don't tell me I'm okay with knowing that you have a poor sense of self. That's all I want to know. I don't want to know why it originated. Okay?
So
I need to know.
What you alluded to just now, if we want to dig deeper, जो medical fraternity के अंदर, the way psychiatry is treated, the way psychiatrists are looked upon, हम उसमें भी काफी गहराई में जा सकते हैं कि how that results in the predominantly psychopharmacological practice. हम उससे भी पीछे जा सकते हैं intellectually, किस तरह से the way science is developing, the way the university is structured, the way the ideology of materialism, as Sheldrake calls it, as Paul Witz alludes to, उन सारी चीज़ों में जा सकते हैं. बट जो आपने आखिरी जुमला इस्तेमाल किया कि I don't want to hear about it, it does offer a lot of convenience. It takes less time. You don't have to hear a lot of, it's very emotionally taxing. You have to hear about people's traumatic experiences, facilitate them working through them. It's draining. Medicine is just so much simpler.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, unfortunately, that's the case. लेकिन जो medicalization of psychiatry, that has that flavor to it as well. A lot of, and of course, there's a whole spectrum to the practice of psychiatry. But the whole idea of med checks, 15 minute mein aap bas patient ki medication sahi kar denge and you'll send them out of their office and they're happy. Sometimes your patients are happy because they don't want to talk about in detail, and that's understandable.
It works for the both of us.
It works. It's a deal that works for both the psychiatrist and the patient. And there's nothing bad in that if it works that way. But definitely, it's much quicker. You make much more capital if you're dealing with medications. And sitting down with the patient, trying to understand them, not only takes a lot of time, it also eventually might lead to you earning less money, which hurts, honestly. But also, more importantly, I think it's emotionally very taxing and draining. और उसकी वजह ये है कि you have to relate with your patient. The psychiatrist, the psychologist has to relate with the patient. They have to share their sadness. They have to share their anger. They have to bear their annoyance that patients oftentimes do make us feel annoyed. And why would anyone want to do that? So let's take the easy route. Here's the pill, which is backed up by science, and some of it is. It's being misused.
So you have to be really damaged and wounded to actually want to do that.
Who needs to be damaged? The psychiatrists?
Yeah, if the psychiatrist doesn't want to just do the pill and he wants to go into this therapy and he wants to talk long,
Are you
analysis.
trying to say that I'm damaged?
Then
Whatever
maybe
kind
the
of
psychiatrist needs treatment.
If I take a jab at you, I take a jab at myself and as Azam. Hopefully, we're not the psychopharmacologists that psychiatry tried to make out of us. But yeah, that's there's. But the gratification, right? It's harder work, लेकिन at the end of the day, जो एक mutual enrichment होती है, कि when you are able to help, like genuinely help someone through those difficult corners in their life, or you have to dig deep and you have to go into painful memories and events, and you have to make yourself vulnerable, right? वो सारा कुछ होता है. But then when it actually pays off, when it works, when they grow, they don't necessarily become happier, but they grow. They become better people. You become a better person. Isn't it worth it?
I think that's an answer that every individual has to ask themselves. A lot of time, people, when they start off their psychiatric practice and X number of years, let's say 15 or 20, they often use this term, I became disillusioned. And when you ask, what does that mean? They're like, I'm not happy with where psychiatry is going. My work doesn't give me as much satisfaction. So I think there's a lot to explore there for the psychiatrist. Okay, why is it that you feel unsatisfied with your work? And essentially, you're putting the psychiatrist on the patients, on the couch, or on the seat, right?
First, you said that psychiatrists have daddy issues. Now you're saying they have existential issues.
I think they can't. Without being facetious, without pointing fingers at any of them, either the therapists or the psychiatrists, I think the patients are human beings, and the psychiatrist is also a human being. We as a profession and as professionals often have a tendency to forget that. We're treating so much suffering and illness. A psychiatrist समझता मुझे तो ऐसे हो ही नहीं सकता, right? I cannot lose a sense of purpose in life, a sense of meaning in life, a sense of disconnectedness from my work. And when it happens to them, it's quite disturbing. और वो फिर फर्क शक्लों में सामने आता है. So just like a psychiatrist or psychiatrists like to be listened to, right? Their patients also like to be listened to and like to be understood, right? Oftentimes, if psychiatrists जाते हैं for the treatment of their own depression and anxieties and whatever, they don't turn towards psychopharmacology. They turn towards therapy. That's always interesting. I'm not saying that's across the board. Again, I'm not saying medications don't have a part. But the idea is that the psychiatrists are subject to the very same laws that their patients are subjected to. जब हम depressed होते हैं, तो we have this tendency of saying, oh, I'm burnt out. Psychiatry or medical professionals में इस्तेलाह इस्तेमाल होती है. this is chronic fatigue syndrome or passion fatigue, or burnout. We reserve the word depression or unspecified mood disorder for our patients, not for
इसलिए
ourselves.
आजम एक जुमला कहता होता है,
And then there's
आजम वो टॉमी वाला.
कौन सा वो टॉमी वाला?
हाँ,
ये जैसे साइकेट्रिक मेडिसिन्स का जो है वो डिसकंटिन्यूएशन सिंड्रोम होता है, लेकिन ड्रग्स का जो है वो विड्रॉल होता है. जिस तरह साडा कुत्ता है, थोड़ा कुत्ता टॉमी.
right. तो जी, तो in a sense जो positional और academic conflicts हैं psychiatry में, psychology में, unfortunately they turn out to be very tribal. And no offense to the people of the tribes, I think they're very holistic at times. But you know, a better word would be archaic or childish or immature.
even sectarian.
I think they have a lot more in common, but they stick to differences, and then there's many reasons for that. Money is one of them.
Fair. Ali, a familiar name, Dr. Anam J. Nawaz, I believe it is. Thank you
Money
for
and the way our societies are structured.
Ali, if you want to answer a couple of
I
questions before we
see
wrap
that
up.
we have some difficulty with the connection. I don't know if you can hear me.
I think
I can't hear the both of you.
You can't hear either of us? Okay, now we've lost Ali.
Remove him.
Remove him? Yeah, what's wrong with this internet in New York? I thought he is gone. He has left.
Maybe he's in कामों की.
हाँ, हमें न्यूयॉर्क का बताया हुआ, खुद कामों की से लॉग इन किया हुआ. चलो, we'll wait for Ali to join us back. Until then, Azam, would you like to address a couple of questions, or should we wait for Ali to come back?
I think हम questions ले लेते हैं, and if Ali can join, तो वो फिर वहीं पे.
Ali is back. Ali, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, now we've, in your absence, decided to move over to the Q&A. So Dr. Anam's asking this question. Do you think recommending a particular modality for a certain diagnosis could depend on the severity of illness a patient is experiencing?
It depends. Modality से क्या मुराद है? Medications or psychotherapy. I think it.
I think that
really
is
takes
the time this question came up when we were talking about psychotherapy and psychopharmacology.
I see. I think how significantly the symptoms are impairing our patients, because our patients, we don't want to put our patients through undue suffering, saying कि मैं इसका therapy करूँगा because I dislike medications. Therapy is often like watching the grass grow. It takes time. Right? और वो 6 महीने साल a patient is suffering unnecessarily. So there's it on a case-to-case basis. It's not. I think it's not okay to withhold medications when they can be useful. And if our patients are severely ill, yes, we start medications, and we then try to understand what the origins of their symptoms are, and then we try to address that. And continue medications or discontinue medications. Right?
And do you think there would be like a general trend that the more severe
and many times, not all. Mm-hmm.
that the more severe an illness is, that's when medications would be warranted, or that's when a combination would be warranted, or that's when therapy is definitely indicated? That severity is an index of the choice that we make.
The severity, how long it has been for, right? Someone might come to you in an acute state of distress just for 3 days when there was nothing else in the past, right? It's a severe stress, yes. आप उसके से बात करके you can acutely bring down their stress, or you know, बोल रहे हैं panic attacks हो रहे हैं बहुत ज़्यादा, and at that time they can't go to work and they're the only working member of the family. At that time, you may want to intervene with. So therapy does not fit all. Medications do not fit all. You have to spend time.
It has to be tailored. It has to be individualized as much as possible.
You can only do that if you listen to them.
All right. Dr. Anam, once more. In your practices, do you find yourself ruling out or having enough resources to medical neurological disorders prior to diagnosing a psychiatric illness?
ये सवाल आप लोगों से मेरे से. Assalamu alaikum. Anam herself is a psychiatry resident. Anam herself is a psychiatry resident. I would imagine, Anam, you know the answers to these questions. Lekin sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Oftentimes,
all the people from Shifa going into psychiatry, man.
It was all after you. Sometimes very real medical illnesses are overlooked by medical practitioners because our patients also have psychiatric illnesses. So they might think, hey, this is because of depression or this is because of psychosis, and it's not a real disease. In that sense, the psychiatrist should have a basic enough understanding of medical illnesses as well, so that he or she can catch them for themselves.
As far as I can say, most of the population that I'm dealing with is university student, and that just there's particular demographic that I have a greater access to, and they have an access to me. So yes, in this particular population, in their 20s, even early 30s, usually neurological medical illnesses are not that much of a priority that they require to be excluded. Yes, in a more senior population, a more elderly population, that does become an important differential to entertain. So particularly what I have to my daily practice, that's usually a younger clientele. Azam?
जी, I think 50 minutes हो गए. We should wrap it up. और हमारे पास कुछ वैकी वेडनेसडे की क्वेश्चंस भी हैं, लेकिन उसके लिए हमें मेरे ख्याल में अलग से आंसर्स देने पड़ेंगे.
आजम, आपकी प्रैक्टिस के बारे में तो सवाल का जवाब दे दो ना कि do you find yourself ruling out neurological medical disorders often?
अच्छा, ये आपने मुझसे सवाल किया था, सॉरी. Yes, they should be ruled out, of course, and many neurological disorders and even many medical disorders can mimic, and their symptoms can overlap with the psychiatric disorders. Yes, they can. So yes, they should be ruled out, but they should be ruled out with some sense of, I would say, sanity. एक ये भी तरीका होता है कि जो मरीज आए उसका MRI करवा लें. हर बंदे का MRI करवाएं, हर बंदे का CT करवाएं, हर बंदे का थायराइड चेक करवाएं। हमारे प्रोफेसर साहब कहते होते थे कि जिस डॉक्टर की प्रेस्क्रिप्शन पे जितने ज़्यादा टेस्ट लिखे हों, समझे उसने मरीज के साथ उतना कम टाइम गुजारा। ठीक, तो सो ये वाली जो चीज़ है उसको
या फिर
भी
उसने कम
मद्देनजर
टाइम
रखना चाहिए।
गुजारा है, या CT स्कैन, MRI, EEG जो है वो उसके अपने क्लिनिक में लगी हुई है, और एवरीथिंग गिव्स हिम अ कट।
बिल्कुल।
ठीक है, चलें। Thank you so much, Ali, for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure having you here on Psych Baithak. We hope to be bothering you
Thank you.
ever so often.
Sure.
And I'm sure for all of you
on better days.
On better days, on less short of a notice. Ali is the only guest, ladies and gentlemen, who we did not ask if he wants to come on Psych Baithak or if he is available to come on Psych Baithak. We told him, we need you to be on Psych Baithak. And he was very kind enough to consent. And so here he is. Thank you so much. Azam Mariam is asking, why are you always in a hurry to wrap up?
Thank you for having me.
पहले मैं ये जानना चाहूँगा कि इन्होंने में ये अगर सर लिखा तो ये कौन सी मरियम है, मैं फिर उसके हिसाब से जवाब दूंगा।
नहीं, अब ये उन्होंने आपको सर वैसी इज्जत दे दी तो अनुरास नहीं आई।
इस सवाल का मेरे पास कोई जवाब नहीं है।
चले, आजम हैज अ लाइफ पीपल। चले, ठीक हो गया। अली, any last words before I take you off screen?
Just this. I think I think the two of you, what you're doing over here, which is basically distilling down psychiatric concepts, practice.
अली, हमारी तारीफ की जरूरत नहीं है, हमने
public.
जो तुम्हें दोबारा नहीं बुलाना प्लीज।
आजम बोलने देना यार, तुझे क्या है? आजम चुप, मैं आजम को निकाल रहा हूँ। अली बोल।
हाँ,
बोल।
you see how Yusuf Bhai was interested in getting appreciation.
I'm going to remove you two now.
I think it's very important for the understanding of the general public. I think this is good कि हम उनको आसान लफ्जों में मुश्किल बातें बताने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं. I think this is great, and I think you should keep doing this carefully and intelligently.
आजम की तबीयत पे कितना गिरा गुजरता है कि वो मुश्किल बातें उसको आसान करके बतानी पड़ती हैं. You have no idea how painful this is for him. Right? Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you, Azam. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for watching, for your questions, Dr. Anam in particular. We will all see you again next week on another interesting topic and another interesting guest, hopefully on Psych Baithak next Wednesday, 8 p.m. I'll see you all then with Azam Khalid. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam.